Hi, my name is Dr. Rae Banigan. I'm a speech and language pathologist and educational consultant in private practice in Palmer. This program is being brought to you through a cooperative effort with M-PACT for the purpose of sharing information related to communication and literacy. This is the third program in the series, and all of these programs are available at the Palmer and Munson Public Libraries. The first program, Talking with Children, described how children develop communication and strategies adults can use to help them in that process. The second, Sharing the Joy of Reading with Infants and Toddlers, describes skill development needed for early literacy and strategies adults can use when they read to children. In this third program, Sharing the Joy of Reading with Preschoolers, I will describe the three most critical skills a child needs when they enter school to be ready to learn to read and write. And those three skills are print awareness, sound awareness, and the meaning of language. Print awareness. Infants learn that the word that they hear represents a category of meaning and is a symbol of that category. The word ball represents a range of balls, including baseballs and basketballs and beach balls. And although they look different, we use them for games to throw and roll or play, and so that is how they are classified as balls. During the preschool years, to prepare to read and write language, children now need to become aware of the form of the word, the written word, and how it relates to the word that they hear. They must learn that a word is made up of specific, meaningful sequences of sounds. For example, ball is b-a-l. Now that's different than b-o-a for blah or l-ab for lab. So the sequence of the sounds becomes very important. They must learn that sounds are symbols. They're symbolized by letters, and they don't always have a one-to-one correspondence, like the SH says sh, and the IGHT says ite in the word light. And these letters can be written in uppercase or capital letters or lowercase form. So the word ball becomes b-a-l, which is blended together to say ball and is spelled B-A-L-L. In English, we use a system of letters that includes straight lines, as in capital letters A and E and F, or lowercase letters I, K, and L, or curved lines such as capital and lowercase letters for C, O, and S, and then combinations of curved and straight lines in capital letters B and D, or lowercase letters A, B, D, G, etc. Helping children to be aware of the system of the formation of letters in English, visually recognizing those letters, and developing an awareness of the sounds represented by those letters, as well as helping them to form them in writing, are all skills that develop during the preschool years. Though learning the letter name is important, the sound it represents is much more valuable because we only use letter names when we spell words aloud, like B-A-L-L. However, we use the sound whenever we read and write, b-a-l. So when you identify a letter for a child, you could say that's a B, or you can say that's the letter B and it sounds like B. Adults can help the development of writing with some very simple strategies. When children begin to scribble, they include motor movements of just one line or just scratchy movements. Adults can expand those movements to help them learn to do the motor movements they'll need for writing. For example, taking that scribble and making the circular spiral movement on the paper, or making a vertical line, drawing a vertical line down, or a horizontal line on the paper, and then crossing those lines, or making curved or angled lines, and then again crossing them, as well as forming things like the circle or the square or the triangle. It's also helpful when demonstrating or showing preschoolers how to form lowercase letters that you teach them in an order that shows them the consistency of the form, so that it helps them so they're not confused by directionality of words that look visually alike, like the B and the D or the P and the Q. For example, you might start to build the lowercase letters according to form, like you'd start with the C, where it goes around like this, and then the A comes all the way up to the top and comes down. And then the D makes the C around like the A, but goes up higher and then comes down. And then you make the C coming around like the A and then going down for the G, where you would take a completely different approach for making the B, where you'd make the L, the line down first for the L, and then making the line down and crossing it for the T, and then making the line down, up and down for the K, or making the line come down and around a little bit for the H, but then closing it up for the B. So by showing children the movement of forming that letter, you help them conceptualize the letters in relationship to each other, so that they don't make those same visual confusions that they learn when they start to form letters. The first print awareness that we help children to become aware of happens when children just scribble. You know, one line can be a story where you would start to talk about stories that the child is drawing, or their pictures, what they mean, bringing meaning into the picture, or the fact that their line could be a message to you, or talking about the meaningfulness. We don't want to forget the creative process in writing or drawing, but we also want to help children to realize that those lines that they're making can represent or be symbols of meaning. The next awareness is the child's first name, so that they can recognize their own name in print. Usually we start with capital letters, which don't require that directionality of the lowercase. You write the child's name everywhere, on their things, in their rooms. Write them picture notes. All help them to recognize what their name looks like in print. When reading to a child, have the child cuddle up next to you so that you can both look at the book together, but the child can also see your face and you can direct the child's visual looking. For example, when you introduce a book, you would say, oh, we're going to read this book. Let's look at this book and see if we can see what this book might be about. For example, oh, what's this? This is a house. Well, who lives in a house? Well, people live in a house. Maybe this book is about people. Let's look. Oh, there's the word people house. Also pointing out that, in fact, there are capital letters. This is the title in the book. The author's name is in the book. There are going to be some characters in this book. The characters are a mouse and a bird. So just by looking at the cover and directing the child's visual focus, you're focusing them into looking at the book even before you start to read, and seeing the print and the visual layout of the book. It's also important, as we read, to identify things like punctuation. For example, "Come inside, Mr. Bird," said the mouse. Well, there are quotation marks here. Those mean that the mouse said something. And then there's a capital letter. We always put a capital letter at the beginning of a sentence. And we put a period at the end, except if it's a question. When we ask a question, we use a rising intonation, like, "How are you?" We rise our... In the written form, we help children realize that we use a question mark to give that same information that we've asked a question. You want to follow the line of your reading. "Come inside, Mr. Bird," said the mouse. "I'll show you what there is in a people house." So you help children learn to visually track what you are saying. And again, pointing out letters. Oh, there's the letter C. It says K, just like in your name, Kathy. So you want to point out the visual awareness of what is on the printed page as you read. You also want to identify written symbols other than books. For example, when outside driving, point out specific forms or symbols that we see, such as a stop sign has a very specific 8-sided shape. It's amazing how young children recognize visual things. I've seen children as old as 14 months of age recognize the M for McDonald's. Once they're pointed out to them, they realize that these visual things have meaning. Point out street signs when you're going to look for a friend's house, that those signs have the name of the street. You can then point that out when mail comes to their house with their name and address. In the grocery store, pointing out the symbols on their favorite foods or the names of their favorite foods. That's, of course, if it's something you want to buy them. Don't tell them the symbol if you don't want to buy those foods. They'll figure out those symbols on their own. But in looking at the mail, newspapers, the computer, looking at the computer keyboard, on the TV, pointing out things that they see, looking at showing them how much print is in the world, and that all of those symbols are just another form of expressing communication. The next component is sound awareness. Infants and toddlers learn sounds in babbling, making sounds for action like we, and then they learn to say words. After they've stored several words with the same sound, like mom and more and me, they do put that sound in memory so that they'll be able to motorically produce that sound when they learn a new word. However, that is an unconscious storage, so that children don't focus in on what that M, the sound that M makes when they learn to talk, meaning they can learn to talk and not have any concept that when they say mom, the first sound is an M. They learn to say the sounds that are easier first, vowels coming first. Then by 3 years of age, they generally can produce consonants, the P, as in the P, the B, the M, the N, the H, that's the H sound, and the W sound, because those are easier to produce. By 4 years of age, they should produce sounds that require tongue mobility, like the K, the K, the G, the G, the D, the T, the F, that's the F, the Y sound, the Sh, and the Ch. Then by 7, once they're in school, and again during the process they develop these sounds, they develop the sounds that are harder to produce motorically, like the 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 S, the Z, the J, the V, and the V or the F sounds. Once children can produce sounds, they need adults to guide them to listen to hear the form of the words so that they'll be able to read and write them. They need us to help them learn what that form of the productive language is. The basic building block of a word is, of course, is the vowel. Vowels have a short sound like a, e, I, and where we cut the sound production to a minimal. And then they have long sounds, which also say the name of the letters, as in A, E, I, O, and U. Y sometimes is a vowel, like in the word happy, it has a vowel sound. And there are other the W sometimes, like in the word cow, the O-W, W is identified as a vowel. In English, you can't have a word without a vowel, but you can have a word with just a vowel, like in the word I, where you just have the vowel. A syllable is built by adding a consonant before or after the vowel, as an open syllable, such as at, or a closed syllable, where you have a consonant before and after the vowel, like in bat. And then we build syllables like battle or battlefield, where you combine syllables to form longer words. We can also alter the sounds in a word to make rhyming words by changing the first sound of the initial consonant and keeping the vowel and the rest of the word the same, like in cat, mat, sat, and fat. All we do is change the first sound, and we make words that rhyme. But we cannot change the sequence of sounds in a word, or you change the word. As the example I gave you before, bat, if you change the sequence of those sounds, you get tab, which is a different word. Preschoolers need to develop special listening processes to interpret the sounds of language. As I said before, they generally listen to language just as a whole, listening for the whole word or the whole sentence, and listening just for the meaning. They will need to be able to learn these separate processes in order to be able to read and write. Adults can easily guide preschoolers' learning by focusing their listening on sounds of words when reading a book. There are many books, such as Dr. Seuss books, where patterns of sounds are repeated and emphasized to focus the preschooler into listening to that sound structure of words. When reading to a child, clap out words in sentences or syllables or sounds within the word to help them hear the parts and the rhythm of language. Having the child repeat short sentences from a book, or repeat the syllables in a word, or repeat the sounds in a word, builds up what we call a listening memory or a working memory that is needed to process at the sound level. Counting the number of words or syllables or sounds, again, helps the child do what we call segmentation, where helps the child hear that sentences, words, and are all made up of parts and different levels of parts. Like, I eat a banana. I eat a banana is 4 words, but the word banana has 3 syllables, banana. And the word eat has 2 sounds, eat, even though it's spelled with 3 letters, E-A-T. When reading, identify how words sound the same and how they are different. Like B is a noisy sound, but P, that looks the same on the mouth and is actually formed the same, is a quiet sound because we don't use voicing. We can change the first sound in a word, like bat and cat, or we can change the vowel in the word, as in bat, bit, or we can change the last sound, as in bat, ban. Helping children tune into where their hearing sounds change and what you can do, how you can play with the sounds to make whole new words by just changing one sound. To help a child listen to beginning and ends of sounds, you ask the question, did I say a word that starts with B? Or say a word with sounds separated. See if the child can blend those sounds together to guess the word. In the water, I saw a frog. What did I see? Oh, I saw a frog. Or, what says meow? A cat. What are the sounds in the word cat? K, at. Helping preschoolers to be aware of the sounds in words and the letters that represent those sounds will help them begin to develop the skills they will build on when they learn to read and write. Now, back to our little book here in the People House. A people house has things like chairs, things like roller skates, and stairs. You say, oh, listen to roller skates. That has 3 parts to it. Listen to chairs, stairs. Those words sound alike, don't they? Let's see, how are they different? We have ch airs and st airs. Those words rhyme because it's just the first sound that is different, the ch as in ch or the st as in stairs. Bananas, bathtub, bottles, brooms. That's what you find in people's rooms. Oh, do you remember what word I said that sounds like rooms? Ah, brooms. We just added the b sound in front of rooms and got brooms. But you know what? All the words on this page also start with the same sound. Listen and see if you can tell me what sound they start with. Banana, bathtub, bottles, brooms. Oh, they all start with the b sound. These are donuts. Here's a door. Come along, I'll show you more. Here's a ceiling and here's a floor. Floor and door. Those words rhyme too. So as you're reading, you can ask questions about the sounds to help the child not only listen to the meaning of what you're saying, look at the words and the letters that are representing the words that they're hearing, but also start to listen to those words as being made up of sounds and how you can play with, change those sounds. You can listen for differences, listen for how they're the same, and change one sound and make a whole new word. The last critical component of development during the preschool years is learning the meaning of language. We talk, listen, read, write to share our thoughts, our ideas, our feelings with others, and to expand our thinking and our knowledge. Reading gives us the opportunity to share new experiences, enrich preschoolers' lives and learning, and to spend some very special time with our children during our very busy lives. To focus on meaning, the adult should identify new words in a book, use information from the book to guess the meaning, but most importantly, to relate this new word to the preschooler's experience. You want to relate new words to words the child already knows and has stored in memory, so that you make connections. Think of a network, a spider web of networks in our brains where all of the knowledge that we have, we organize into categories of meaning, but that we also make connections to those words and how we use them in other ways. So whenever you present a child with a new word, especially in books, where they're going to hear new words that they may not hear in everyday language, you want to make connections. For example, in our book here, have you seen my duckling? And again, you would point out the title, and oh, there's a question mark there. Someone's asking a question here. Let's look. Up here, what's that? That's a duck. Look, here are some baby ducks. Baby ducks are called ducklings. There's that word, duckling. It has the word duck in it, but then it has part. Wonder what a duckling is. Well, let's look at the picture. A duckling is a baby bird. Do we know of other words that change when we talk about babies? What about our dog? When our dog was a baby, we called him a puppy. Or the cat. We call baby cats kittens. Or bears, as in the Three Little Bears, we call a baby bear a cub. In this way, we're making connections between this new word, duckling, to other words and other meaning for the child. So again, they're not only just learning the new word, they're now relating the relationship of this new word to other words that they have in their memory. Again, you want to name all the things that you see on a page that might be members of the same category. For example, in this book, as the mother duckling looks to find her missing duckling, she encounters other animals. She encounters an otter. She encounters other creatures in the water, frogs, lizards, bugs, butterflies. So as you're reading this book, you would want to point out all of the things that we see that would be related to things that you would see in the pond. And again, helping children store new information with information that they know in an organized way, so when they see the word or the picture, they can more easily find the word. Think of taking everything in your kitchen and just throwing it in the room, in closets, versus putting the same things in the same closet where you can remember where they are. The more that you can help children organize new information as they are listening to it, the easier it is for them to remember that information and recall it later. And that recall becomes very important for children when they are working on reading comprehension, because reading comprehension is reading and then remembering and recalling what you read. When you look at print and sound awareness, those are skills that children need in decoding and reading. Decoding is just looking at the letters and figuring out what those letters represent to get to the word. But reading itself requires looking at meaning, and that is where we look at comprehension. So when children learn to read and write, they're going to be doing decoding, which means breaking up and looking at the symbols of what they see in the print symbols and the sound, and then they're going to be working on actually reading and reading to get meaning. So identifying any way that you can when you're reading a book, the language and the meaning of what you're reading is as critical as identifying the print or the sounds of the words. Another component of learning that preschoolers do is they look at developing concepts of quantity. So for example, you'd want to count. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 ducklings. But oh dear, when she comes back from her morning to get food for her morning swim, to get food for the ducklings, how many ducklings are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, she had 8. Now there are only 7. Oh dear, 1 is missing. So that even by talking about the story, you in fact can help children begin to see concepts of numbers and quantity. Children also learn concepts having to do with location during this preschool time. And again, in the story, well, these ducklings are in the nest, but the duckling that's missing is not in the nest. Where is that duckling? Oh, that duckling is over here. He's behind the grass so that the mother can't see him. Or we can look on another page. In this page here, the ducklings are swimming behind the mother. Here, the missing duckling is behind a lily pad. So again, you're not only sharing the information of the story, but you're helping to identify concepts of learning that children need to learn during those preschool years. When telling a story related to meaning, the sequence of events is important. And after a few pages in a story, you want to review for the child to help the child to focus in on that sequence. What came first, what came second, and what came next. This helps the child think back to the information that you showed them. For example, in our have you seen my duckling story? Let's think, what was the first thing? Mom went out to get some food for the ducklings. And when she came back, what was the next thing that happened? She counted her ducklings and they weren't all there. Well, what happened next? She and her the ducklings that were there went to look for the other duckling. So in fact, then, if you do it every few pages, children will begin to see the continuity and the sequence of a story, and again, that sequence is important. You can also expand the child's thinking skills, or cognitive skills as we call them, by asking questions. For example, when we get to hear that the mother is going to look for her duckling, we might ask the question, what do you think will happen next? Where the child will have to take the information that they've heard in this story and predict or draw a conclusion or take a guess at what might happen next. Well, if someone was lost, the mother may go and ask other people. Well, let's see if that's the case. Look, you were right. The mother duckling goes to another bird and says, have you seen my duckling? So again, you were right in what you guessed. So that you help the child see that there's a relationship between everything that happens in the meaning of a story. We can predict, we can take guesses. Sometimes our guesses may be accurate as to what happens in the story. Sometimes they may not be. But the fun part about that is, with a story, what we may be able to do after we read this story, and especially books such as this book that don't have words on every page, we can in fact help children to realize that, well, the author had one idea of what this story could be, but we can create our own story. We can change the story by adding new information, or we can then take parts of this story and make up another whole story on our own of how we might like it to end or how we might like it to happen. And in this instance, what you are doing is you are using books to help the preschooler have a concept of a story, what the parts of the story are, what's important, and how you can think to create your own story, and also how you can think to interpret story. One of the concepts that develop in young children during these preschool years is the concept of cause and effect, where something happens and it causes something else. I'm going to go to the store because I need some milk, or I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy some food so we have it for dinner. You want children to focus on this relationship of what happens in life that is represented in a story. But we also want, in stories specifically, we want to focus in on the components of the story. For example, in our book here, what are the characters in the story? The main character, of course, is the mother duckling and the baby ducklings. But all of the characters that she encounters in the story, where have you seen my duckling, where she sees the bird. Have you seen my duckling? She encounters an otter, and the otter swims with her to look. Up, there's a frog. She encounters a frog. So we want to identify the characters. We also want to identify the setting of the story, where it takes place. This story takes place in a pond. So this mother and her ducklings may encounter another bird with her. Actually, this is a finch, I think, with her goose. You might encounter a goose or other mothers with their babies. Or may encounter, we're going to keep finding this. Oh, here we go. We may encounter a turtle. So the setting becomes important when reading a story to a child, to help the child look for what is in that setting and how what's in that setting is important to the story. We also want to focus the child into what happened in the story, and what happens in the story becomes critical. In this story, what happened first? The duckling was missing. Well, the whole story then is based on that event, so that's an important event. And the mother develops a plan. How am I going to find my duckling? And the whole story takes you through the steps of the mother's plan, till, of course, at the end, the turtle finds the duckling for the mom, and the ducklings all go home and go to sleep in their nest. So in a story, you have the setting of the story becomes important, the characters, the events of the story, the plan that the character has to solve the problem in the story, and then you have a result. Those components make up the basic structure of all stories. And once you point out those to your preschooler can then start to tell you stories. Take an event that happened in their everyday life. Well, let's make a story. What happened to us when we went to the store? Obviously, an adult is not going to point out all of these components of print awareness, sound awareness, and meaning on every page in the story. If you did, the story would be lost. And it also might be difficult sometimes to recall, okay, well, you know, what was this I should be doing? But as you read to your child and you start to be aware of thinking about helping the child be aware of the print, helping the child being aware of the sounds of language, as well as the meaning of the story and the parts of the story and the sequence. As you think of a story from that perspective, it will start to be easier. And in fact, you will start to use these strategies as you tell every story. Once you think about these, they will become natural to you as part of the reading and sharing that you do with your child. At that point, you will not only share that joy of reading together, but you will be developing valuable skills that your preschooler will need when they enter school, so that they can achieve a far greater level of success in school by the skills that you shared with them when you read simple books to them and shared the joy of reading with a preschooler. Thank you. I hope the information that I've shared has been helpful. Enjoy reading with your preschooler.